What is up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in a living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Let me say that one more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you can have me, yes, little old me, on the ones and twos, the digital wheels of steel at your next event. I like to do the weddings and the corporate parties and the karaoke jams. Yeah, I like it. I like doing it all. Parties are my specialty. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. But for today, let's learn together on What Makes You Smarter. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, June 27th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, coronavirus cases spiked to new high for third consecutive day. The U.S. again hit a new record high number of new confirmed cases of COVID-19 on Friday. 5 states set new single-day highs, and the country recorded more than 40,000 new cases. Wednesday's and Thursday's totals were also the highest yet since the coronavirus pandemic began, and infections are skyrocketing in places that were previously not heavily infected. Florida, for example, recorded nearly 9,000 new cases, and Texas officials are warning their hospitals may soon be overwhelmed. Both states have moved to restrict activity that had previously been allowed, such as closing bars. Despite the localized spikes, White House Coronavirus Task Force expert Dr. Anthony Fauci warned the hotspots could easily spread. He urged all Americans to heed their, quote, social responsibility, end quote, to wear masks and continue to social distance. This is according to the Washington Post and the New York Times. Number 2, Texas, Florida roll back some business reopenings amid coronavirus spikes. On Friday, Texas became the first state to reimpose lockdown measures as it faced what Governor Greg Abbott described as a, quote, massive outbreak, end quote, of COVID-19 cases following its attempted reopening. Abbott's executive order will close bars that had previously been allowed to operate at 50% capacity. Beginning on Friday, bars may remain open for delivery and takeout. Restaurants are also being scaled back from being allowed to operate at 75% capacity for dine-in service to 50% capacity, and gatherings of more than 100 people are once again banned. In Florida, where a record 8,942 new coronavirus cases were reported Friday, on-site alcohol consumption at bars is now suspended. This is according to The Hill and The Week. Number 3, judge rules ICE must release detained children because of coronavirus. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement must release children currently held in the country's 3 family detention centers for more than 20 days by July 17th because of concerns over the coronavirus. U.S. District Judge Dolly G. of California ordered Friday. G and the centers, which house 124 children, are, quote, on fire, end quote, citing one Texas facility that has at least 11 confirmed cases. G said ICE could use tracking devices on some parents if that's the only way to release the children safely to, quote, non-congregate settings, end quote. Although the ruling applies only to children and does not compel ICE to release parents, in response to the ruling, the White House accused G of being part of a group of, quote, activist judges, end quote, who, quote, have imposed their own vision in place of duly enacted laws, end quote. This is according to NBC News and NPR. Number 4, House Democrats passed bill to grant D.C. statehood. The House of Representatives passed a bill on Friday that would grant Washington, D.C. statehood. The bill, which will almost certainly die upon reaching the Republican-led Senate, was passed 232 to 180 on nearly exact party lines. Though Democrats say making D.C. a state would give much-needed representation to a district with more than 700,000 residents. Republicans say the bill would be a Democratic power grab, since 3/4 of D.C. voters are registered Democrats. the bill would make much of D.C. its own state, but leave federal property like the White House and Capitol Hill under congressional jurisdiction. A similar bill was debated more than 25 years ago. This is according to the New York Times and The Week. Number 5, Pompeo says U.S. imposing visa restrictions on Chinese officials over Hong Kong. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Friday said the United States will impose visa restrictions on, quote, current and former, end quote, Chinese Communist Party officials, quote, believed to be responsible for or complicit in undermining Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy, end quote, although he did not name any of those targeted. The move comes before China begins a 3-day parliamentary session Sunday, during which a national security law aimed at Hong Kong is expected to pass. The law has raised concern among Hong Kong's opposition movement, as well as the international community, that Beijing will severely curtail the city's freedoms. The Wall Street Journal reports that a series of recent U.S. actions, especially regarding Hong Kong, have angered China, and Beijing is quietly sending Washington a message that the side's trade deal is at risk. This is according to Reuters and the Wall Street Journal. Number 6, Supreme Court won't require Texas to let all voters submit ballots by mail. The Supreme Court ruled Friday that it would not require Texas to let all eligible voters vote by mail, a matter of intense national debate. As is typically the case for emergency applications rulings, no reasons were provided in the brief order, and there were no noted dissents. Judge Sonia Sotomayor, however, did issue a statement saying she hopes, quote, the Court of Appeals will consider the merits of the legal issues in this case well in advance of the November election, end quote, but that an emergency request was not the right time to consider, quote, the weighty but seemingly novel questions, end quote. The Texas Democratic Party had requested the court reinstate a district judge's order requiring state officials to allow all voters to submit their ballots by mail. This is according to the New York Times and the Washington Post. Number 7, Intel report. Russia offered militants bounties to kill U.S. troops in Afghanistan. American intelligence officials have informed President Trump that they believe Russia's military intelligence agency has secretly been offering bounties to Taliban or Taliban-linked militants for the killing of American troops in Afghanistan, according to an explosive Friday report in the New York Times. Trump was reportedly first briefed on the findings in late March, although he has not yet acted in response. Islamist militants are reportedly believed to have collected bounty money from Russia's military intelligence agency, the GRU, although it's not clear which American deaths or how many are suspected to be linked. The involvement would be, quote, a huge escalation of Russia's so-called hybrid war, end quote, against the U.S., writes the Times, and would also be, quote, the first time the Russian spy unit was known to have orchestrated attacks on Western troops, end quote. This is according to the New York Times. Number 8, brands pull advertising from Facebook, leading to $7 billion hit. Several companies, including Coca-Cola, which said it would cease running ads on all social media platforms for at least 30 days, have pulled advertising from Facebook's network, handing Mark Zuckerberg $7.2 billion in losses as part of a boycott over what critics consider the platform's failure to police hate speech and disinformation. Shares of the company fell by 8.3% on Friday, eliminating $56 billion from Facebook's market value. The departure of Unilever, one of the world's largest advertisers, played a big role in the hit. Zuckerberg responded to criticism Friday by announcing Facebook would put a warning label on all posts that break its rules but are considered newsworthy, providing no exceptions for politicians, including President Trump. This is according to Bloomberg and NPR. Number 9, Minneapolis City Council votes to advance law enforcement transformation proposal. The Minneapolis City Council on Friday advanced a proposal to change the city's charter to allow the dismantling of the police department after a unanimous vote. The Minneapolis Police Department has been under severe scrutiny following the killing of George Floyd, whose death while in police custody set off nationwide protests against police brutality and systemic racism. The 12-0 vote is a first step in the city council's plan to transform the city's law enforcement, though the process won't be easy. The proposal is expected to face several bureaucratic obstacles, and Minneapolis voters, many of whom have expressed concern over a recent increase in shootings in the city, will have the final say. Still, the council members say they are determined to see the process through. This is according to the Associated Press and the Star Tribune. Number 10, American Airlines to restart booking flights to full capacity. Beginning next week, American Airlines will resume fully booking flights after having reserved half its middle seats in economy since April to better enforce social distancing. Quote, as more people continue to travel, customers may notice that flights are booked to capacity starting July 1st, end quote. The airline said in a Friday statement, quote, American will continue to notify customers and allow them to move to more open flights when available, all without incurring any costs, end quote. The move comes after the United States experienced back-to-back record high caseloads of coronavirus this week. American Airlines will join United and Spirit, which are already booking flights to full capacity. Southwest, Delta, and JetBlue, meanwhile, are still restricting the number of seats for sale, and Southwest committed to do so through at least September 30th. This is according to USA Today and The Week. That's 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, June 27th, 2020. Thank you so much for listening. I hope everybody's doing reasonably well. Let me know what you're up to. What do you think of all this? Drop me some comments. Really, let me know. Also, if you want to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. This has been What Makes You Smarter. I'm Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube. Username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/Keys Dan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening.